called, gone on Facebook pages, gone on Nextdoor.com, come to council meetings, made public comments, and mentioned their issue with crime and their feelings of not feeling safe in this community. Just an example was just recently in tonight's meeting, a gentleman came and spoke about security as it relates to the community center. So crime is basically on the minds of many residents, and they're wanting to speak about it publicly. And what they're looking for is leadership from us, the council. They have come begging and pleading that the village council respond, address, and lead us during this time where they feel unsafe. So, behind the scenes, since about November, I have worked with the network, but I have talked to the village manager and offered some suggestions. And I have taken a lot of suggestions from the residents into regard and had a lot of conversations with people. But this is behind the scenes. And I think that we have been elected to have conversations publicly, not behind the scenes. And that is another reason why I've decided to bring this discussion item before us, so that we as a council can speak about our concerns, we can listen to the residents, give the residents a platform, not just a section in the public comment section to discuss this. We have individually made comments during our council comments at the end of the meeting. But these are, again, individual comments. It's not a discussion. We have not discussed this. And I bring this before us maybe to take action, maybe to see if there's action to be taken. Maybe there will be no action that will be taken tonight. However, I would at least think it's important enough for us to look at it as a council. The mayor said several meetings ago, in essence, that it is not just the responsibility of the Miami Shores Police Department to look at crime in our community, but it is the responsibility of the residents as well. And I am in full agreement with that comment. And in fact, I admire, respect, and welcome comments from residents, suggestions, and people who are willing to take responsibility. And so one of the residents who came up has come before us and spoken during public comment, and I have reached out to individually, is Captain Kerr from the Miami-Dade Police Department. And he is a resident who is concerned and would like to offer suggestions. And so what I would like to ask is if he can have a couple minutes to make a short presentation. And one of the things he's going to discuss is ideas. And this is what we're looking for, to come together as a community for ideas, suggestions to improve upon our safety. And one of the ideas that he has brought before me was looking into an independent assessment of the police department, where an independent agency will look at our police department for free and identify patterns and practices that can potentially improve upon. That's just one idea that one of the residents has taken and has taken the initiative to suggest to this council. So my first question is if we can please hear this presentation.
And the duration of the presentation?
Mr. Kerr?
I go with the flow.
Okay. And Councilwoman Ledesma, you're aware that we've been constrained in some portion of this dialogue to make sure that we do not conflict with the laws and rules that govern collective bargaining. You realize that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and so as we proceed under that constraint, which is why, over a period of time, we have had many crime forums. Okay, our police chief has run them, our department has run them, they put a lot of effort into them. There has been one each year. There was one in November, right prior to the crime wave. And there have been, the chief has put a lot of effort into Facebook chats as well as his scheduled meetings over at the country club, the chief chats. So these efforts have been to the village manager's employee, who is the police chief, since we're talking quite a bit here about administrative duties. Our chief of police is the one that, if I were doing this, I would call on our police chief to speak first, since the people who are here might not have had the opportunity to hear his expertise in running our department.
Okay, I understand that, Madam Mayor. Absolutely. I have made a request to have the police chief here, and I thank you so much, Chief Lysette, for coming. And I'm also really happy to see your lieutenants, correct? Both of you are lieutenants, yes, here, and I acknowledge you. So, you know, it's up to you who you'd like to, you know, have speak first or second. It's fine with me.
Understood. So can we go ahead then and invite the chief to speak?
Oh my God, absolutely. And it was my intention to hear you as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I didn't really have any backup, so I'm not really sure what I should talk about. You know, I can talk about the department, the history, the crime statistics, and the things that are going on in the community. I can talk about it on a national level, so I'm really not sure where to start. So let me just start with an overall statement on the crime in Miami Shores. During the month of November, we did see an uptick, and actually it started a little bit before that in certain areas. However, for the year, we actually finished fairly well. The only two crimes that we had of the Class 1 crimes that were above this year were robberies, which is an extremely important issue for us and the community. Last year's number was 30, this year's number was 31. The other big crime that we deal with here is residential burglaries. The year before last was 118, this year was 103, so we're moving in the correct direction. The one issue that did come up this year, that it continues to be a thorn in our side, is the motel. We did have a homicide at that particular location, and we didn't have any the year before that, so those are the numbers that we did see an increase in. Over the course of the year, we've had a number of operations and details going on. This last detail that started in November has been extremely effective. There are a number of arrests that we made. Some high-profile cases that happened were rapidly solved with that. That doesn't make us immune, though, in this community to crime. As early as just this Friday night, Saturday night, we had another incident occur. Could have been much more serious for us as a community. Could have been deadly for the officer involved. We're not immune. This community is surrounded by a criminal element on basically all sides except for one side, which is the water. I will say that we have an excellent staff. The staff that I have, my 3 lieutenants, has over 100 years of experience combined, and 50 of that just here in Miami Shores, serving this community. I have two new staff members here with me that bring ideas and thoughts from other agencies, both significantly larger than us, one being coming here from Pembroke Pines previously, and also working with Broward County School Boards, the other one who worked for Hialeah Police Department and then for Alventura Police Department. Without specific questions, I'd be happy to hear what Captain Kerr has to say.
Thank you, Chief. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I have so many questions for you, Captain, but I want to first have an opportunity to listen to Captain Kerr's presentation, talk with us, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Dan Kearns, 759 Northeast 94th Street, and just I want to predicate everything before we start with, I'm not coming here in my capacity as law enforcement. I'm not coming here as captain, even though it's kind of the thing that's stuck on me. I'm coming here as a resident of Miami Shores, and I've come in prior meetings to specifically talk about this to get exactly what's happening now, where we can actually have a forum and discuss it. It is not at all indictment of the police department, the chief, or his staff at all. It's not. I'm pretty sure I have a good working relationship. Maybe not. I don't know. Now it kind of seems like a versus thing going on here. It's also not in my capacity or former capacity in a past life, which sometimes I deny. I was involved in labor negotiations and the unions and things like that. While I'm still a very proud union person, I'm no longer on executive board, and my disdain for labor negotiations, no offense to people that engage in them, they're just not fun. I don't want to do them anymore. So I'm not at all in those either two capacities. I'm not here as a cop, and I'm not here as a union goon to say one thing or the other. I'm here as a resident to say we've got to do a global view. We have to take a step back and look at how the department is funded and staffed. And really, I will never call a chief and say, put a cop on this corner, do more enforcement over here. That's not the role of the citizen at all. They can call and complain about a crime fact, but they shouldn't engage in the operation and enforcement of the department, because that's where you get a conflict. Nor should council, nor should an elected official. There should really be a separation, and the funnel should all go through the administration, city manager. So the only thing I can really direct is to my council people. Hey, let's talk about this. We've got to do an assessment. And I, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, have been through various versions of assessments, from friendly ones to Department of Justice consent decrees, which aren't that friendly. You don't want to end up in one of them. You don't want to end up in one of them. Trust me, you don't want to end up in one of them. And the number one way you will end up in one of them is if they believe there's a lack of supervision, a lack of command structure, demographically incorrect department. If you think that can't rise up here in 0.3 of a second, it can. The police department understands it. The citizens understand it. We've got to have somebody take a step back and look. And I don't think it should necessarily be the administration of the department, because we are very close-knit. Everyone knows each other, and it's kind of hard to step back and say, hey, maybe we should clean up this a little bit. Maybe this is working well. We can improve on that. It's a lot easier when it's a third-party person, and if money's the issue, there's, grants and people that will come in there for free and do it. It's really much, much better if the department subscribes to the assessment. So it's really much better if the people that are actually being spoken to welcome it and appreciate it and understand what it can be. And from a chief's point of view, I would want it because I can say, hey, look, they said I needed this. It helps when I come asking for budget increases or funding changes, things like that. So it's not a matter of, it could come, they say, you got to raise their budget. Well, we got to figure out how we're going to do that. That's something that the council, that's your job. That's what you do.
So, Captain Kerr, just can I interrupt 1 second and explain, and I think you already know, that actually at the behest of Councilwoman Ledesma, we began a couple of years ago a resident budget hearing. It would be a welcome time for a resident such as yourself with the expertise you have to come to that budget hearing and say, it does seem to me that the police department budget is too low, and then an extra allocation due to the facts that you would present or the facts that we would come to know of. That is actually the right time to make that budget proposal, which will be coming up very shortly, possibly the month of March. Last time we had it early in the month of April. I just wanted to interrupt.
Right, I respectfully disagree with you. I don't think it comes from a resident. I think you have a responsibility as a council and as an administration to do a proper and professional assessment. I can come to you and say, hey, this department gets paid this amount, and they have this much staffing and this much calls for service and all that. But that is very labor intensive. I've done it a lot. I've actually done it in the city just on the side, and the numbers will stand out almost every avenue you look, whatever demographic you want to pick, whether it's tax-based, socioeconomic status of the place, crime volume, crime severity. Almost everywhere you would look, we're lacking in our cities nearby that are commensurate to us, which is also difficult to determine because we're very unique in where we are in our area, in our population. It's unique. It shouldn't come, absolutely, a resident can come up, I'm going to come in and say, and believe me, I'll be there to say, you should give the police department a 50% increase in their budget. I'm going to come in there and literally say that. But it should be supported by facts that I don't present. I can present them. I'll bring a little PowerPoint and flip through slides. It really should come at the behest of your request from a professional agency or a professional consultant or however you want to do it. There's plenty of old retired cops that do this for a living, and we'll do it for you. That's where I believe it should come from. And I'll be at the budget hearing to say send more.
So we have both, we have the resident budget
Absolutely.
hearing and the council budget hearing. Okay.
Absolutely, and I think it should, but I think, and I appreciate Councilman Desma for opening the discussion item, because it shouldn't come at the end during public hearings, because what will happen then is, every single item that comes up, the residents are going to come up and bring it up for that thing, crime for crime.
But Captain Kerr, you're not here to say that our own police chief
Madam Mayor,
doesn't
do you
develop a
mind,
budget.
Absolutely, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you've got to make an assessment on the tools you've given him, whether it's his budget or whether it's a funding issue or an allocation issue. I'm not here to make that judgment yet. I think a professional should. And I don't necessarily think the professional is the one that's issuing the check. You understand what I'm saying? I think we should have somebody from the outside, and I can't imagine why you have an argument against that, to make some kind of assessment. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I resent your tone and your defensiveness around us wanting to have a conversation about crime. Your tone, your comments, everything leads to you being defensive. And that is the issue with our community. We should be able to have conversations where residents have inputs, council has inputs about crime in our community. So,
Councilman Ledesma, I'm coming from the direction that I've been a victim of crime, as everyone understands. I have heard several of the residents that are here tonight talk about crime and their crime concerns. And each time we've had a council meeting since we've had some difficulties, we have listened carefully and politely. And I am listening carefully and politely to Captain Kerr at this point. I had questions for him during his presentation. Captain Kerr, are you finished with your presentation?
Sure.
Thank you.
thank you.
So go ahead and take public comment then.
Oh, I would absolutely. Now, I'm not done with the comments. I would definitely like to hear from council. I know the residents also want to hear with what the rest of the council thinks and believes. But yes, please, by all means, I welcome public comment.
Would you rather public comment first?
Sure. No. I'm the councilwoman, but I respond to what residents want. I think it's fine. Let's go ahead and have public comment, and then we can finish our council.
Yes, sir. Yes. We're going to do 3 minutes, and please do not repeat the comments of someone else. Thank you.
Jonathan Rose, 1259 Northeast 98th Street. I would love to live in a crime-free community. Having owned properties here, Key Biscayne, having owned properties in Sunny Isles, I haven't found one yet. We have dear friends behind gates, some as close as Belmead. They haven't found it either. Now, the one thing that concerns me, I have had an opportunity over the years here to have to reach out to the police. The response is very quick. I'm concerned that anyone would see this department as not accessible. Because I'll tell you, they're extraordinarily accessible from the chief down, and accessible on any issue at all. I'm not an expert in law enforcement. I'm one of the people who call when we need it, and I thank God they're there. But I do want to share with you that in my neck of the woods, we've seen a lot of new people come into the neighborhood. Some are demolishing properties, some are building on them. It's great. And to a person, when we take the time to meet these folks and say hello over the last year and a half, one of the principal elements that constantly presents itself, we're here because it's safe, we like it. The kids walk around. My own children walk around in this neighborhood. And I think that's a tremendous testimony to this police department. Recently, just to share something with you, I had a FedEx package that was to be delivered to me. My address is 1259. It went to 125 on the same street, Northeast 98th Street. The gentleman was kind enough to call me, a young architect who has his business here. As we started to talk, he had just moved here, Coconut Grove, and talked about moving here because of his kids and the safety and the comfort. I would love to live in a crime-free zone. Absent that, this is our choice based upon what's available. And I think we're all very fortunate. Is it perfect? I'm sure it's not perfect. You want to give them more money? I personally would love to see a helicopter. I just think they're neat. Give them more money. But I will tell you this. I think you have a tremendous administration here. And I think the first step is for them to be analytical. They know this department, they know this neighborhood, and I will tell you from living in other neighborhoods, this is a very unique neighborhood. I think they should be able to do what they have been doing so well. Thank you.
Up here again, Bob Swan, 770 Northeast 98th Street. I speak from 41 years of law enforcement experience. I was a command level officer with Miami-Dade Police Department. This department is probably one of the finest in Dade County that you will ever have. Training-wise, response time-wise, I can tell you that when departments hire outside assessors, they're hiring retired cops who want a second job. It's not necessary. The statistics bear the chief out that some crimes have gone up by one robbery, burglaries are down. As long as you've got Northeast 6th Avenue, Biscayne Boulevard, 103rd Street, 95th Street, you're going to have people coming through the village who are going to commit crime. It's just the way it is, unless you wall us off. Now, you all voted $200,000 for a dog park. I would have loved to have seen that money go to tag reading equipment at every entrance and exit to the shores. Well, maybe it's proposed now. You know, if you have a problem with your police department, please go to that man right over there and discuss it with him. But I look at this as, what, is this an indictment of the police department? If people have questions about crime, there's the man over there that'll answer it, and those lieutenants will answer it. When I call the police, I have them there like that. They're one of the finest departments you could ever ask for. And there's an old saying, you don't fix something that isn't broken. Leave it alone. They're doing a fantastic job. Trust me.
Madam Mayor, I just would like to reiterate, this is not an indictment on our police department. This is the council doing its job, responding to residents' concerns about safety and creating a discussion where we can discuss what we can do as a community.
Francine Steelman at 25 Northeast 110th Street. I've lived here in Miami Shores for 15 years. I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but I completely trust our police officers. I think they do an excellent job. Excellent. The only thing I would ask is, I know that we do the chief chats, and they're in the morning at the country club, and I think that more residents would have access to these chats, that they'd be held. Maybe one I don't know how many you have, one a month or maybe two a month? So maybe one during the day as you do at the country club, or maybe one in the evening at the community center, so that residents who can't go in the morning can participate in the evening. That would be the only thing I would add. But I think that you guys are very, very visible, and I appreciate it. I've had a couple of instances. I've never been a victim of any crime in this neighborhood or anywhere. But there's been a couple of instances that crime has been around my neighborhood, and I've had interaction with the police officers that they have been completely professional, very helpful, and reassuring. And I just want you to know that I appreciate that.
I know it's not supposed to be a back and forth, but if I could just ask, if there's a crowd here, is an evening better for chief chats or a weekend? Because I have held them on the weekend, and if I get some feedback, I would be able to.
Raise your hand if an evening is better for you.
Evening or weekend? Weekend?
Evening.
Evening?
Hand up.
Weekend?
And weekend?
How about a weekend evening?
Mix it up.
You might still have me on the record from before, but Damien Melverton, 30 Northeast 104th. And obviously I would like to reiterate the comments about the quality of the police force here. I've lived in 4 continents, going from the very crime-plagued Johannesburg and parts of Latin America through to the extremely safe. But I've also lived in Washington, D.C. at a time when it was dealing with an extreme crime situation towards the late 90s, where indeed it was the murder capital of the world. I'd gone from Johannesburg to Washington, and the crime rate's very similar, which astonished me and frightened the life out of my mother. I think one of the major things that I learned out of my experiences in all of the communities that I've lived in was the need for communication. And certainly what we're seeing at the moment is a wonderful attempt to actually do exactly what the Councilwoman is asking for, which is some back and forth about this. One of the things that I think we're at the cusp of right now is an improvement in communications in many ways to help the Chief and others get their points across about, are we in a crime wave? Are we not in a crime wave? What is being done? What could be done? What should be done in the future? The website, for example, is quite static. There is definitely an update scroller at the bottom, but I think with so many different vehicles available, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or other elements, we really could help residents feel, number one, closer to their police, number two, more empowered to actually act as their own aides to the police in a way that I was in Washington, D.C., where we were simply encouraged to make phone calls every time that we saw crimes in action. And I had 3 major drug houses around my residence in D.C., and we had them all shut down in the space of 18 months simply because we made a statistical bump in the Washington, D.C. police numbers. It was a case of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so I think there are many things that we could look at to actually improve the communications aspects, make it much more dynamic and more fluid, and bring the community closer together around such an important issue as this. My job is communications, and I would even be prepared to help in a pro bono way, in whatever way it could be, to actually be of some sort of contribution, simply because I have seen it, I've experienced it. I've been mugged 4 times in my life, everything from knives through to guns, and I would not wish it on any of my fellow citizens. And so, but there are things that we can do to feel more empowered, to feel less scared of the situation, to feel that it's out of our hands, to look to others to solve it for us, and the Chief and his team are doing an admirable job in that. So I'd just say that communications would be one thing to consider further, but I do applaud the Councilwoman and you all for taking this on.
Thank you.
Okay, if I first before you thank you.
Yes, my name is Jenna Reinhardt Receif, and I live at 10634 Northeast 11th Court, a street that will live in infamy at this point based on what happened Friday night. I consider myself in a somewhat unique position based on the positioning of my house. So the hotel with gate access goes straight into my street, and the gentleman who shot the police officer is 5 houses up from me the other direction. I came here previously speaking about the motel, and I have beyond no indictment of the police department. The police department's fantastic, and I feel so grateful that we have our own police department because they do respond very quickly, for example, when we were burgled. My concern at this point is absolutely allocation of resources by the council. So we got a dog park. I didn't know it was $200,000. It makes me want to literally throw up right now, because there was a murder in March at the motel, which is inside of this jurisdiction, and there's still a gate with access straight to my neighborhood, where my 2 daughters do not walk 5 houses up the street to our neighbors who were evacuated during the shooting on Friday night. They haven't for a couple of years now, because I am not confident that there is not somebody who has easily taken access from the gate through from the motel, or alternatively from the Met store up the street that's outside of our jurisdiction. I feel very strongly that the neighborhood, the portion of the shores that I live in currently, and I don't know the statistics, but I'd wild guess we're on the higher end of crime. And I would love to see resources attributed to security assessment and to our police department to make some type of concrete effort to change the dynamic in our particular area of the shores. And I'm sure there are other areas of the shores that are particularly vulnerable, but I know my neighborhood is, because I live between the murder and the cop shooting. And I'm furious, which I think is readily evident from how I'm presenting. And there are a lot of my neighbors here tonight. They're not going to speak, I suspect, but I'm here because we need concrete action from this council, whether it's an independent assessment of what is appropriate for our police department, I don't know. But I can look at this and I can tell you 3 things right off the bat, knowing nothing. I'm a labor lawyer. I know nothing about security. 1, we don't need gate access from the motel to my street. Get rid of it. Wall it up. Do something, please. 2, lighting is too dim throughout the shores, and particularly in my area of the shores. And 3, maybe we could have cameras on access to some of these areas that are cul-de-sacs. There is 1 vehicle route into and out of my neighborhood. And yet, and I have no idea at this point what accurate reporting is from the incident on Friday night, but what I've heard is that there were 2 vehicles in there prior to the incident that maybe were engaged in some type of robbery or burglary. I don't know if it's true or not, but here's what I do know. If we had a camera at the entrance to a cul-de-sac, a single camera, we'd look at it and we would see whether or not there was in fact the cars that were described by my neighbor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I did want to say, it's just a point of information that we did have the chief, we did it over a $500,000 allocation forfeiture funds at the last council meeting, which will be the license plate reader cameras as well as the non-intelligent cameras. It was the biggest amount of money that we've ever spent on cameras, and it was approved at the last council meeting. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Liz Cowan, 321 Northeast 93rd Street. Thank you for all of your comments, because I thought that they were quite good, except for one, but it doesn't make any difference. It was the dog park, but anyway, that's just me. I think that Councilman Ledesma brought this to council, I think, with very good intentions, and I thank you for that, because I think that we do deserve to have a community conversation about this. And yes, with all due respect, Mayor, you came off as being very defensive, and it's understandable. You're defending your police department. I didn't hear anybody attacking the police department. I think it would be an excellent idea, because we do have crime that needs to be addressed and discussed, and we should be able to do whatever we can to make it better. So I don't see where Chief Lystad or any of his staff would feel particularly offended if we could get, I think FDLE will come in and do an assessment, or other organizations will come in and do an assessment and say, hey, Chief, this is what we can do better. I think the police department is understaffed. I think that more money should be devoted to the police department, and I think that's the crux of the problem. And I'm sure the chief would love to have more staff, because there was a car on 93rd Street sitting there empty all day today, 92nd and 4th. Nobody was in it. I mean, I don't know if that's supposed to be a deterrent, but I'm sure that there are things that we can do to make the community safer. And I'm sure that the chief would welcome them, and I think that we should have somebody come in with fresh eyes, take a look, sit down with the chief and say, hey, how about this or how about that? I don't know. You don't know. And maybe he would welcome that. Thank you.
Hi, John Garcia, 169 Northwest 104th Street. Like you, I was a victim of crime a few months ago, and I was here when there was a voting for the funds to be allocated to the cameras. I spoke to the chief after that. I don't know if it's the time to ask a question, but will we have visibility to see how those funds are going to be used and where these cameras are going to be placed? I live on 104th and Northwest 2nd, and that Northwest 2nd is a hot road. I mean, everybody that should not be going to there goes to there, and I don't feel safe anymore. And if I'm going to be voting to allocate funds to place cameras, like you, I would like my corner and my neighborhood and where I live to be secure, and to know that there is protection there, because I have cameras in my house. Unfortunately, they didn't allow any quality video, to see my neighbor's camera. They were not good either, but there was nothing else in the part of the city to find any additional information to get these people. And also I wanted to find out if if there's an initiative to advertise in the entrance, especially the main entrance to the city, that this is a protected area by cameras, so people know when they're coming in that they're entering a place where they're going to be watched.
Why not? Al Crespo, 689 Northeast 92nd Street. I've been the victim of several crimes in the village. Had car stolen, car broken in. My next door neighbor was attacked behind our building. Guy ran over her foot. We've had other crimes in the area over the years. I was the subject of a cyber stalking event based on my activities as a blogger. I wasn't happy with the outcome of that, but I'm a big boy and I'm not here to cry. But I do think that it's always good to have another set of eyes come in and look at things. You know, if you want to know, if you want to have transparency, if you want to have the ability to have best practices, you can't always rely on just saying, well, our guy's doing a good job, so let's go with our guy's opinion. All right? You sometimes need another set of eyes, a fresh set of eyes, a different set of eyes to look at situations. I think that that's not unreasonable to ask. I think that everybody here who's expressed both praise for the department and expressed concern for, you know, their neighborhoods or the crimes that have been committed in their neighborhoods, and all the people who haven't expressed it, because there have been a lot of activities going on. Miss Mayor, first time I ever knew about you was you were running, chasing somebody down the street, Supergirl or whatever. You know, I saw you, Wonder Woman. I saw you running down the street. I said, "Go ahead. That's a mayor who runs after people." You know. So, but I think it's not unreasonable to support a proposal to look at the department with a fresh set of eyes, because we can all learn things from new people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're meeting for running for mayor.
I'm Janet Goodman. I live at 1174 Northeast 105th Street. And I too live between the murder and the cop shooter. And I want to publicly thank the police department, Miami Shores Police Department, the county police, Golden Beach, for the unbelievable response on Friday night on my block. And personal thank you to the canine cop who was shot twice. Unfortunately, a lot of the information that our neighborhood got was incorrect, because we got it from the news, and it wasn't so. And even with the murder that happened last spring in the motel, to this day, I don't know who was killed, why they were killed, what the situation was, if it was a prostitution or a drug deal gone bad. And I think it's important, even for my safety, I felt like I really needed to know what happened over there. I agree that the wall, the gate probably should be pulled up. Thankfully, the code was changed last year. I think it was after the murder. The code on the gate was changed. But cameras would be a great idea, except in our neighborhood, it's a lot of walk-ins, people committing crime walking in. I have suggested, and I'll put it out there again, maybe an idea would be a satellite station, a satellite police station that you can erect on my property. I'm all for it. There is one in existence over by Publix in the Miami Shores condo area.
I don't know how active it is, but I think our little satellite station in our neighborhood would be very active, and it might be an idea as well as lighting. I do a lot of dog walking at night, and most of the streets here are very dark, and I've heard talk of lower street lights that doesn't interfere with the tree canopy, which would be very helpful.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
John Farina, 82 Northwest 100 Terrace. I had a small conversation with the chief a couple weeks ago after one of these meetings. Basically mentioned a couple of things that were touched on tonight. What I'm not hearing is the cooperation between the residents and the police. The residents are pointing at the police. The police are basically outnumbered. It's almost like termites. It's not when, it's, if, it's when. So crime is a definite problem. My conversation with the chief I mentioned, which was mentioned a couple of speakers ago, about video cameras. A lot of people are putting them in. And what do we get? Nothing. You get the tops of people's head. They've got hats on, whatever. The idea of the plate recognition, I think, is great. But my suggestion to the chief was maybe we can have the police department look at a particular company that provides the proper electronics, so when we want to put in a video at our residence on our own money for our own security and possibly to lower our own insurance costs for homeowners, that there be minimum guidelines for the actual camera itself, so that information that we find as residents that may happen will be of use to the police department and not just another fuzzy picture. Because we all think we're great camera people with our cell phones and everything else. This is a different type of thing, and it should be recognized as a different type of item, and it should be raised in importance because of that. If we have a network growing in the near future, that would be able to help the police department tremendously and make people feel safer. Thank you.
Dennis Leyva, 69 Northeast 102nd Street. Thank you, Councilwoman Ledesma, for bringing this up. I've lived in Miami since 1958. I moved to Miami Shores 5 years ago. The housekeeper across the street at 9 o'clock in the morning, she had a gun put into her stomach. She was pregnant 6 months. The house on the corner was robbed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Our neighborhood, all of us met with Chief Lysack. He explained the whole scenario, blah, 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 and that was 5 years ago. I think an assessment is due. I think you as the elected officials should take the responsibility of doing it and making it happen. And it's not an indictment on him, how good he is, how bad you are. It's just realizing the world changes. This place has changed dramatically. Everything around it continues to change. And you need to investigate, educate, and find out ways to better our community. And just to bury our heads in the sand and we're Miami Shores and it's still 1952, that is not where we're at. It's 2017, and I hope everybody understands that. The fact that cameras are being placed, my God, I can't believe it finally took that long for this to happen. I guess enough people or crime had to occur, but an assessment by an outside agency, I think, is important. I think you need to look into yourselves from fresh eyes, like he said, and I don't know why people are afraid to look or afraid to investigate, but it is your duty to find out how to best serve the residents in this community, and I think a starting point is by having something done to find out how better make this village. And a lot of people feel there's a lot of crime. The statistics might not say it, et cetera, and so forth. But I can tell you from my personal experience, living in Coral Gables, Miami Beach, Brickell, Miami proper. Now I can say I know 2 people across the street from my house that this happened to them. 9 o'clock in the morning on a weekday, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. And crime happens everywhere. But now that I moved to Miami Shores, I know the people across the street that it happened to. So I hope you have an investigation.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to talk there?
Madam Mayor, I have a couple of questions for the police chief. Number one, just so that everybody's on the same page, Mr. Lysak, could you explain what it was that actually happened on Friday? We'll start there. Please. Yes, thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Tammy talking to me. So the question was again?
What is it that happened on Friday evening?
On Friday evening.
Yeah.
So on Friday evening, what happened is we received a report from a resident that an individual had a gun. The initial report came in. They come out of their house and said that and this is still an active investigation, so realize there'll be some little bit of changes. But I know that the original media statement said that multiple people were shot, that there were multiple subjects, there were vehicles involved, and a lot of that is not necessarily true. So I can take you and give you the information that I can give you, but some of it is still being worked on from Miami-Dade. At that time, the original statement from the homeowner was that the subject ordered the homeowner back in the house. They closed the door, called the police, and said they saw someone they think had a gun. Our officers responded. We actually had an officer close in the area. One of our officers observed the subject on the Kmart side, fleeing. He jumped back over into that particular area behind Kmart. A perimeter was established. We called in our K-9, who requested additional K-9 officers from the county. At that time, our officers were conducting yard-to-yard searches, the K-9 officers, with the support of Miami-Dade and other units as a tactical support. A Golden Beach officer was searching one side of the block, came across a location where we believe at this point his dog alerted to a subject. At that time, when they went to go around the corner, which was, it's kind of hard to describe, it's sort of a patio, but there's a closet on the patio. When they went to go toward the closet, the subject opened fire with two rounds. One round hit the officer in the right bicep, and the other round went between his vest and his back. At that time, the officers retreated. We called in SRT. SRT came and responded. We had the subject identified. We did evacuate people in the area. At the conclusion of SRT's attempt to make contact and negotiate, they went and they found the subject deceased.
Thank you, and the reason why, thank you so much for sharing that information. The reason why is because it's concerning to me when an officer is shot in our community. I definitely want our officers to be safe, in their job as safe as they could be, and also there was a lot of misinformation, and so it was important to get clarity. I have a question about calls for service. And I have a statistic here that the calls for service has gone up significantly. Can you tell me what the calls for service have been in the last couple of years? Do you have that?
I can talk about 2015 and 2016. I didn't know what really to prepare for, so I have the calls for service.
Yeah.
So looking at my calls for service for 2015, we responded to approximately 11,327 calls for service.
Okay.
Our 2016 numbers are approximately 21,308. And so I would like to talk about what some of those are, so that there's a clarification to that.
Of course.
Some of the major jumps in those call for service. One of those is vacant house checks. In 2015, that was 872, and it jumped to 3,875. Extra watches went from 595 to 2,108. Our heightened patrol went from 206 to 3,979, and our traffic stops went from 1,889 to 2,399.
Okay. So, my question to you is, why is it that if the calls for service went up 10,000, why didn't we get an increase in the budget that you were asking for, money, for 2017, since there was this huge jump?
We did have conversations about that.
Yeah.
I had conversations with my boss in July about that. The budget was already settled.
Okay.
We have had ongoing conversations about that, and I don't know if the city manager has briefed the council or not, to the extent that we have now gone from 37 officers, which was funded in the budget, now we're 38.
38.
That was a mid-year change based on a personnel adjustment in our department.
What I would like to see is, I would like to see your budget increased. And, that would be based on the fact that your calls have increased significantly. And that's just one thing that I'd like to see for this upcoming budget proposal. And so what exactly do you base your budget numbers on, if it's not necessarily calls or the volume of calls you're getting?
There's a number of things that you use to base your budget on. Some of it's crime. Some of it's also calls for service, free time. So there are some things that impact the department that are not necessarily always just call-driven. So, for example, if I was at full strength, maybe an increase in calls for service wouldn't necessarily be an impact. If I'm not at full strength, the more calls for service put a higher demand on my officers. My ability to train, my ability to accomplish other organizational mission statements, such as the number of times we assist at schools, whether or not we can provide a DARE program. So there's a number of different things. Historically, the primary focus from council and everyone else has been focused on the crime statistic numbers. The cost for service, though, is a primary driver of anything that we look at as far as service, because it basically takes an officer away from proactive patrol or directed patrol. However, if you look at the number of heightened patrols, that is directed activity where we are sending officers into specific high locations where we're having crime, so that we can make an impact.
Okay, thank you. I love how thorough you are in your answering of questions. You're so thorough. I love that. Captain Kerr created a spreadsheet, helped me create a spreadsheet. I gave a copy to everybody in council. I have some additional copies here. And if anybody's wanting to look at it. And the spreadsheet basically compares Miami Shores, South Miami, Key Biscayne, Pinecrest, Miami Springs, and North Bay Village. It lists the population. Oh, would you like to see it? Here.
I was going to comment.
You got a copy. Okay, great. Median income, the city's budget as a whole, the police budget, and then, the number of police officers. Yes, please. And then the calls for service. We weren't able to get all of the calls for service information. But, seeing here, I think this is a good comparison, just so that we see where we are when we're talking about budgeting and talking about the police budget in particular. Key Biscayne, for example, has $1 million less than us, but they're a unique case because there's only one entrance in and out of Key Biscayne versus us, who, we're surrounded by many municipalities. And so, I think that South Miami is a good indicator, and they're about $300,000 more than us annually, is what they're budgeted for police. And, or they're about the same. I'm sorry, for this year they're the same. Thank you. They're identical. Yeah. Thank you about that. Pinecrest, for example, is also similar to us. They're at $8.4 million. For their police budget. And so I want to be able to propose a budget, but I also would like to have some backing and some evidence, and to know exactly what the money is going to go for, exactly what we're supporting in increasing this budget. And so one suggestion is an assessment. Another suggestion can be an advisory committee for a community-based advisory committee that focuses only on crime. So this is, thank you, Chief. So this is something I'd like to talk to the council about, is I'd like to see what kind of consensus we have as far as the idea of directing staff to investigate further assessments. Who does assessments, how much they are, investigate the ones that are free, for example, and what they offer. I also want to talk to us about the idea of investing more in our police budget.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilman Byrd.
So, the time has come for some council comment, and I've got some ideas that I'd like to share with you all. And I'd like to say first that I appreciate the conversation tonight. When this, wave started back in October, I started talking about it in council comment back then. Public safety is one of the reasons I ran. Those of you who know me well know that in my first 3 months living in the Shores, I was broken into once, and there was another attempted break-in while my wife and I were sleeping one night. So, while I haven't to the extent that a lot of the residents have gone through some of the challenges, I'm very sympathetic, empathetic to your concerns. I'm raising my family here, and I have friends, and we live here in part because of the reputation of this police force and the job they have done, the almost 12 years I've lived here, in keeping us safe. I also just as recently as a couple of years ago went through some challenges where I had some very aggressive folks that were picketing outside my house and threatening my family, and I'm very grateful to the men and women of the police force and what they did to keep my family safe. Very grateful. I would like, though, because a lot of people are paying attention to public safety right now because they've either been directly affected or their friends, that the council has not been ignoring this issue until tonight. As has been alluded to at the last meeting, we passed a very complicated, very expensive, very comprehensive web of cameras that will cover Miami Shores. I started talking to the chief about it over a year ago after I got elected. It was one of the things I ran on. It's been very successful in other municipalities, both in terms of helping solve crimes, but also even there's data that supports it as a deterrent as well. So we have been listening, we have been working, we have not been sitting still. There was also, Janet mentioned the lighting and what we've been discussing with the lighting. We have a very extensive tree canopy in Miami Shores, and we've had residents that are very reluctant to cut that tree canopy to accommodate lights. So we've been working with FPL to try and find a solution in terms of lower hanging lights that allow us to keep our tree canopy but also light up our streets. I think we all acknowledge that we have a significant problem with street lighting, and that's something that we're paying attention to. That being said, on its face, the idea of somebody, sort of independently taking a look at the police department and seeing if there's best practices, ways we could get better, that doesn't strike me as an insane request. We have, peer reviews all the time in my business, and, it makes sense to me. But I also don't like, we have a publicly noticed item that doesn't talk anything about establishing an independent review of the police department. And I don't like ambushing staff. And I think that the approach tonight probably would have been better served if we were going to talk about that, allowing the chief to come in and explain the pros and cons of doing something like that. And so for me, for tonight, I'd rather leave that to another day when we can have an intelligent, prepared conversation about that subject rather than, sort of shooting from the hip here tonight. I think we're a council that's prided itself on making smart decisions, carefully considered decisions, after hearing all the facts, and I think that we should do that again tonight. I appreciate the feedback. Honestly, I would have liked to see this as a crime town hall rather than, an item buried on an agenda. I think that probably would have been better served, but maybe next time that's what we'll do. I know that to a certain extent the chief chats accomplished that, and I know that they've been well received, and I get good feedback on the folks that have attended them. So I want to thank again the police department. I think they do an excellent job, including the leadership that's here tonight, and I appreciate everybody coming and expressing their concerns. And you have to understand, I hear you loud and clear, and I want to make this the safest community we possibly can. I know our statistics look like they flatlined, barely ticked up in some places, but my goal is 0, right? And that should be everyone's goal. Whether or not it's realistic to get there doesn't mean we can stop trying, or we should stop trying, so, all right?
Councilman Miller?
I sit here as a resident of 50 years, and over the years, things have happened to us the way they've happened to most of you. I consider this, for all the communities that I visit, that I see, crime is their number one priority right now. We are not unique in that. We are unique in having a police force that will respond almost before you've hung up the telephone. And that is extremely unique. We have a lot of new residents coming in, and they are not quite as savvy about the communities around us and the spike that the whole communities as a whole have had. I had the privilege and the honor of representing you over quite a few years now. And earlier in my term as mayor, the chief and I have had lots of conversations about all kinds of things. And he said, you know, get ready, it's going to come. They're opening up the prisons, and the people who have been incarcerated are now going to go back to their regular jobs, and their regular jobs, unfortunately, is taking advantage of all of us. And this is something that the police chiefs all over our area were just waiting to happen because of what was happening in the court system and what was happening to those who were incarcerated. You could almost chart it from that. And so I had a little bit of, let's say, background. And so when I see things happening, I think, yeah, the crooks came back. They came back to their usual homes. And where are we? We're in that usual capacity of being the ones who have and they don't have. So they're coming after us. I think our police officers have done a fantastic job. I think, and I hear from, have heard and still hear from residents that the reason we've moved to Miami Shores is because of them. When you compare that to other communities, big and small, and I was asking just recently some people from the Coral Gables about their crime statistics, and not even crime statistics because the people I asked didn't have them at their fingertips, about how they felt about crime in their area. And they said, oh, we have it all the time, it's just not reported. So even though we may feel we're targeted, we unfortunately are just one of the groups, and you know who our neighbors are, and you know the roads they take. I know the roads they take, and I know how hard it is to corner everybody coming through our community. And thank goodness, most of the people who have caused crimes for us have been caught, and they've been caught because of the wonderful police work that our police department has done. This does not happen as easily when you're dealing with a large group. We are unique in the fact that we are one of the smaller ones, and we do have a handle on it. That's not to say that we haven't had our share of crime, but it is also to say that when I ask people about what's happened, and they tell me about their robberies and what happened, I said, how long ago? 5 years? Once it's happened to you, you don't forget it. And you talk about it as if it happened yesterday or even today. Now, granted, what happened in the area behind Kmart, I had hoped that we would be able to purchase that property and make it part of Miami Shores, and I tried very, very hard over the years to do that. I'm thwarted at every point, and certainly our county commissioner has been no help in that at the moment. So one of the things you, the residents, can do is talk to our county commissioner and say, you know, We need to have that as part of Miami Shores so we can police it and take care of it the way we do the rest of our community. It will corner us off. It will certainly be a very strong protective barrier to the homes that are behind it if we own the property. That's not to say it doesn't bring its own cause of problems, but nevertheless, I think it might solve some of the ones that happen in that particular neighborhood. I have only compliments for our police, and I think that we should be honored by and really feel treasured the fact that our police chief is recognized by the police, the local police chiefs, as well as those in the state, for doing an outstanding job in his department in all ways. Certainly nobody is opposed to ever having other people take a look at it. But I'm sure, and I feel very confident, that our police officers, with the experience that they've had in other communities, they have friends all over the community, and they say, what are you doing that's unique? And they share. And I know our police chief does. So that they're not working isolated in this cocoon called Miami Shores. They have friends all over our community, greater community, and they are always talking about their business, keeping us safe. So I have talked, and as Ms. Gwen was saying, most of you don't know the many hours that each one of us has spent not in front of you all, but behind the scenes talking to people, getting ideas, and finding out what's happening. Sometimes these things happen very well. Obviously, in today's world where everyone wants to know everything about everybody almost before it happens, it becomes extremely difficult. But Miami Shores is changing too. They're becoming more tech savvy, and they're going to be even more tech savvy. I know that, and I know the conversations that have gone on. You're going to see it, and for many of the people who have not had a personal experience with crime, they're going to go on with their lives just the way we always have. But I do not want you to ever think that our police officers are not communicating with others and finding out just what's worked for them and perhaps what hasn't worked for them, and instilling that in our officers so that we can be confident when we call that we have the best you could possibly have working for all of us. And I feel that way extremely strongly, and have over the years. And as many of you know, over the years, I too have been one of those candidates for those who felt they wanted what we had. But it did not happen yesterday. And I'm not talking about it as if it happened yesterday. It happened years ago. But I learned when I ran for office many years ago now that people felt, well, if it happened to them, it happened right now. Well, you know the problems I've had. When did it happen? 4.5 years ago. Well, we change. And our police officers and their duties and their responsibilities have changed. And all I can do is send accolades their way and say how delighted and lucky all of us are to live where our police take such good care of us. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess it's my turn. I just have a few closing remarks. I would like to say, Councilwoman Ledesma, to you that I am certainly not opposed to hearing public comment about crime in our community at any time. I think that it was a bit of a prick to me, and I felt defensive right away because there was no detail and backup to your items. Didn't know what you planned to bring up and what we were going to get involved in. Because I happen to know that these particular three gentlemen were up all night Friday to Saturday, and here they are, they've been here several hours. And so I feel sensitive to that as our collective employees. And I guess the other thing that sort of pricked me in knowing that this was going to come up in a council meeting is, what do we really affect? We affect the budget, right? We don't oversee the police department directly, and we've heard from others that it would be a mistake if we did. So I believe I'm responding to what you were saying in terms of me being defensive. Yes, I will defend our department to the max. And I will do that based on current things, not on past things. So currently, some of my dreams have come through from the department. One of my things that I really think is important, and I hope that the neighborhood that was just affected by the crime it had, and I'm sorry for you, you know, I know it was 6 hours of helicopter circling, and I talked to some of you. In fact, I spoke to someone at the Super Bowl that I attended at a residence nearby, and he lives right next to that abandoned house where that took place. And I just happened to get into a conversation with him, and he was the first resident that proposed to me that the gate should perhaps be no more in that community. And so I believe that's something that we take away and go ahead and try to investigate for the people that live there and for the policing that needs to be done there. In terms of the motel, currently there is an idea out there that we may be considering, after Planning and Zoning considers it, for a redo of the motel into something that would perhaps work better in terms of the crime rate that it brings. So that's another thing that if that comes about, that would be a dream come true if it were the right solution for the area. And the other thing that is new to me as an elected official in the last 2 years is knowing our police chief is on the Florida Police Chiefs Board. He was the chairman of the Dade Chiefs. The governor visited our village for the reason that we have an excellent department. We were recognized by the people that do the calls for false alarms. You know, I've heard these things, and I've attended the things that the police have put on, which are the most recent things, the chief chats, the ability to gather one-on-one in a relaxed atmosphere with the chief and tell him what's been going on and what your concerns are. I don't remember that ever happening before. And the community crime forum that we had at the community center, granted, it was underattended, but he had it, and a lot of police department effort went into that. So that's recent things that have been done. But on top of that, like icing on the cake, is the fact that we're now got an organized neighborhood watch, so that if you want to have one, you have actually the manual that goes with it. Lieutenant McLeod, who just walked in, will come and teach you how to do the smart water on your possessions, so that when something is recovered, you're able to identify that as your own. These are things that are brand new, that are up to date, that our department is doing, that I really appreciate. Additionally, when Councilman Glynn, when we talked a couple of years ago about the license plate reader, and now it's come to reality because forfeiture funds are covering it, not our budget, not our property tax, not a property tax burden, when we have all these other property tax burdens, including the budget, which I consider to be a separate conversation allocated to a couple of months from now. So yes, I do feel defensive of our department, and I would sooner have a motion to have an outside look at our department come from our department. I guess I want to leave with this thought that I think is important, and that is that if you have had a crime in your community, and you can find in your heart to find a person that's willing to at least spearhead a neighborhood watch, to me that is the grassroots organization that is the best thing you can do for yourselves, your neighbors, your children that are using the street, as well as for your department that's helping you out. Because they'll come and they'll spend time with you. And in our neighborhood, we just had it. I had wanted to have it a lot sooner, but we just had one. And neighbors all brought food, and we shared food together. We shared our concerns. We shared solutions. We came away with the department's support. And, you know, now we're going to have everyone's name and number on a sheet that we keep near our phone so that we'll be able to call other neighbors or email other neighbors when it comes time to. And people poo-poo neighborhood watch all the time like that. Oh, well, really? Give me 5 more officers. I'd love to, but I'm not sure you'll want to pay the property tax bill that comes along with us increasing the department to a 0 crime rate. It might, you know, maybe we will. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be. So these are some of the thoughts that have gone through my head as I've listened. I thank you, everyone, for the efforts that went in to getting through this item tonight. And I guess I would like to adjourn the meeting, but I know that we haven't heard from you, so please go ahead.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for letting me address it. I'm really happy to learn that all of us are working behind the scenes, but my intention tonight was to come together and bring it forth publicly what it was that we were working on, because the idea is not to work behind the scenes. The idea is to discuss amongst ourselves and discuss it in a public forum, not as individuals, but together. I would also like to see crime discussed periodically on our agenda, where the police chief comes and gives us statistics, gives us a report. We offer a platform for residents to come and voice their opinions. And I do not intend to move an action tonight. I do intend to bring it up at a later time, now before April. And absolutely, my intention is not to ambush the police department, but really to create a greater dialogue between us, but not do it behind closed doors, but do it publicly. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Council, for everything you've done. And I look forward to having us have more public discussions.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Public comment. Can I go read the announcement? Oh, please do.
There's a lot of announcements, sorry. Okay, so the next meeting is here on Tuesday, February 21st. That'll begin at 6:30. The Fine Arts Commission will be hosting a fireside concert on Friday, February 10th, and that'll begin at 6 o'clock at the rec fields. There'll be bluegrass music, and a number of food trucks will be there. There is a chief chat scheduled for February 9th, and that will be at noon at the country club. The rec department is also conducting a community bike ride, and that is on Saturday, February 11th, and that's at 8:30. That will begin at, I believe it's 9:30, I'm sorry. And there will be a prize given to the best Valentine's Day theme decorated bicycle. The village offices will be closed on Monday, February 20th in honor of President's Day. The Unity Day event is coming up on Saturday, March 4th, and you can call the Recreation Department for further information. And all of this will be covered on our website, so I would urge everybody to visit our website, which is, even though you can still reach it at www.miamishoresvillage.com, we are in the process of migrating over to www.msvfl.gov. And now, if you'd like to adjourn, that's your decision.
Public comment?
That's up to the mayor.
I just want to, again, the sensitivity of a policeman shot in the city, I don't want to, trivialize it by talking about the effect of the helicopters flying over the city. I've, buried some of my friends who were policemen who were shot. So I'm not going to trivialize that one crime. But I will tell you that the responsibility to have the proper enforcement out there when things like that happen and have a supervisor out there the day it happens lies solely on you, lies solely on the council. So I don't want to make it seem to any of the council members that any of this is an ambush at all. Not at all an ambush. I emailed everybody after the last meeting after I stood up here and spoke and said, I'd love to talk to you. Here's my number. Here's my email. I got 2 responses. Councilman Hawley, thank you for responding. Councilwoman Ledesma, the other three I didn't get a response from. My assumption is you didn't want to talk about it. If you do, I'll email you again. I've got some copies I'll give to the clerk. You can have it, a hard copy of it. I'd love to talk about it. There's nothing hidden here. There's no ambushing agendas. Again, it's not an indictment of the chief. Believe me, he wishes he has a supervisor at all times. He probably wishes he had two supervisors and a lieutenant at all times. That's your job. That's your job. And our job as citizens is to make sure you do your jobs. That's why we're here. And we're serious about it. We are serious about it. You had a cop shot in your city. Take it seriously. We are. We are going to take it seriously.
Unity, yes? That's it? No other public comments? Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned now.
Nancy, are you gonna, be a poll worker again? Okay, all right. April 18th, but I'll be in touch, but I wanted to, while you were standing there, I wanted to check with you, thank you. Okay. Yeah. But it's not on the website because it's so old. So, no. He hasn't received that.